Thank you for taking the time to looking at the Automotion video on telescopic rails. I've discussed in different videos different applications for linear rail systems, and now we're talking about extending the linear rail movement past the end of the rail. So these are telescopic rails. At this point I have to make clear that if you're not looking at heavy duty telescopic rails, then you're really looking at the wrong place. What we don't provide is inexpensive pressed steel, I don't know if you can hear that, but very cheap pressed steel telescopic rails. These rails are not made from pressed steel at all. They're made from cold drawn steel, and they really are suited for industrial repeated frequency applications and heavy duty applications. So just to try and make that clear. All of the telescopic rails we provide are made from cold drawn steel, so these are really very heavy duty steel units, and we also, the majority of them have got raceways that are hardened. So when I say the raceways, that means the inside portion here where the ball bearings are going to run, they're hardened to about 60 Rockwell, so they're very tough. There is a range that we produce which is slightly less expensive, which is still made from cold drawn steel, but the raceways aren't hardened, just to try and offer an alternative. So here at Automotion, our telescopic rails come mainly in two different groups. One that we refer to as fully telescopic rails, and one that are partially telescopic rails. So fully telescopic rails means that if, for example, we have a rail length of about 300 millimeters, then when that product is extended, the stroke on it will also be 300 millimeters. So you can see, I'm not quite sure how long that rail is, but you can see that it fully extends. The partially telescopic rails are slightly less expensive, and they will typically extend. So this, for example, is a partially telescopic rail, so that might be about 300 millimeters long, and typically that will extend to about 50% of its closed rail length. The benefits of that rail system, if you can use it, is it's slightly less expensive, but also because it still has a chunk of rail retained in the body of it, it can also take very heavy duty loads. What is quite useful when you're considering what sort of telescopic rail you're after is the first thing you have to do is to look at the loads that you're going to be carrying, where that load is in relation to it is when it's extended, and also the extension required. So if you can get away with a rail length, an extension that's maybe 50 or 60% of that rail length, then I would seriously try and consider the partially telescopic rails, which is the ASN 43 range, the ASN range. But also what's quite interesting is on pretty much all of the rails that we offer, they can double stroke. So for example, that depends on how you can set it up. So you might actually be able to use a shorter rail, but because you can stroke it 50% forward and 50% backwards, you might be able to use a shorter rail length. The same thing with a 100% stroke. If you can stroke it 300 mil one way and 300 mil the other way, you might be able to use a sort of a more compact rail. So the way that that's done simply is so for example at the moment that is opening and that is closing. We've got a little screw at the back here. If I just remove this, hopefully, okay, if I remove this rail now can extend 50% one way and 50% the other way. Okay, so that might enable you to set up your system so you can use that double stroke more effectively, and that's obviously more cost effective. What is important is that on all of these rails is whilst they do have an element of a stop in them, that stop is really not to be used as a hard stop against which you can pull things very rigidly. So for example here, when that moves out to that stop position, what's actually stopping it is a small little lug at the end here, and that lug is catching on the ball cage here. And basically if somebody comes along or you have a machine that's continually pulling against that little lug, what eventually it will do is it will damage the little cage here and it will wreck it. So basically you need to set the system up so you've got an external stop that's preventing that ball cage from travelling and repeatedly hitting that lug. Okay, if I start off with the different types of rail systems that we offer, they're all very heavy duty, but they all vary slightly in terms of the load capacity that they can carry and also the section. So for example, this L1984 DS series is probably one of our most popular rails, and you'll see from there quite often people are liking it because it can take very, very heavy loads, but it has a low width profile. So these telescopic rails can vary from strokes of about 300 millimeters up to about 2 meters. So we're talking really heavy duty, long stroke items there. Nice thing is that they're slim and they're very, very rigid, and if you want to use that double stroke, this could stroke 100% that way and 100% going backwards. What we can also do for customers who maybe want slightly more than 100% stroke, we can sometimes vary the configuration to increase that 100% to about 130%, and we do that by varying, I don't know if you can see here, we can alter the cage in which these balls are retained. So we can reduce that slightly, and that will give you the extra stroke that you might just need that little bit longer. But obviously, because you're now reducing the balls, that then affects the load capacity of it. But typically, on the very heaviest duty of these things, the DS series, this can take up to about a ton over a pair of them. So that is the very popular L1984 DS series. Then if I move on to the L1986, which is the DE series, this has a different profile. Again, so in this instance where you were maybe restricted by width, in this instance you might be restricted by height, but you still want to get that telescopic reach. Okay, just to clarify on these telescopic rails, what I've got here on the table is a small selection of the very wide range of products we have. So for example, this product will come in much larger versions, much heavier duty versions, obviously much longer versions. This will come in, this actually is a smaller type of this size 43 unit. It'll also come in a size 63, all sorts of differing lengths. Just need to have a quick look at what's in the catalogue. Again, this DBN unit will come in different shapes and sizes. So if I move on now to the next product, which is the L1986 DE series, whereas in this DS series you had a very low width profile, but quite a high height to it. In this DE series, we're talking about a low height, but slightly larger on the width side of things. So again, you can see that profile there, where that will then extend, so that is your 100% extension. So obviously on something like this rail here will be bolted to the fixed structure, and this will be bolted to the moving structure, and off you go. And in the same way that we talked about on this DS series, where it can stroke 100% one way, it can also stroke 100% in the backwards direction. Okay. So then we've got a DBN series, which I've already prepared this one, I think, for stroking one way and the other way. But again, it's just got different load capacities compared to the other rails. So it's got better axial and radial loads, a combination of the two. So for example, this will stroke 100% in that direction, but because I've actually already removed the little retaining screws at the back, we'll then find it also can stroke 100% in the other direction. So the ASN 43 series, this is or the ASN series, this is the system where it's partially telescopic, so that can take much heavier duty loads, and it can also take some both radial and axial loads. So this typically will extend 50%, but again, by altering this we can increase that to 60-65% if required, but we tend to stick it to this. This is what it's rated in the catalogue, that's what we've got the data for. If you want to extend it but you're concerned about the load ratings, we can provide that sort of information to you. A lot of information in the catalogue, and also you'll tend to find that on the website, hopefully all the 3D and 2D CAD files will be there for you to download. So just one other thing, I haven't got the product here, there is a similar version to this DS series, which is an LTF44, and that has pretty much got the same sort of structure, but it doesn't have the hardened raceways, and that means we can offer it at a more competitive price, but it'll only stroke up to about 1 metre. Okay, the final two products I'd like to have a quick chat about are products that I haven't got on display here. They are, one of them is particularly for very, very heavy duty loads. It's called our L1996 DMS63 series. We're talking really, really large a product here, and typically over a pair it can take up to about 4 tons. So it's very, very large, and the minimum stroke is 1 metre, and the maximum stroke on that particular range is about 2 metres. And those ones can come left and right-handed. Then we've also got a relatively new product range, which is a special product range just come out. It is on the website, L1997 and L1998, and these ones offer 150% stroke. Again, they are quite heavy-duty products geared to people who are looking for strokes anywhere between 800 millimeters to about 3 meters, and load capacities, I mean, they are very, very large, can take up to about 6 tons per pair. So I hope you found some of these things of interest. I hope I've reinforced the fact that these products are for heavy duty use and they're not the light pressed steel versions of it. I'm very confident in the product and the backup that we provide, so if you've got any technical questions, please do feel free to phone us or send an email in, and we'll try and come up with the recommended telescopic rail. Thank you very much for your time.